I started volunteering at a crisis hotline. I took thousands, hundreds of those kind of calls, but there's one call in particular that kind of changed my life. It was a college student. She was in her first year. She was the first in her family to go to college. Her mother had been mostly incarcerated. Her father was terminally ill. When she got to college, within the first couple of weeks, she got a UTI. She went to her health center. They couldn't get her an appointment for 3 weeks. She wasn't told, hey, you can go to urgent care. What started out as a physical health condition morphed into a mental health crisis. When she was finally seen 3 weeks later, she was initially misdiagnosed, but then she didn't feel well. After that appointment, she walked to a bridge. And that's where she saw the number for the crisis hotline. She called and I was the one that picked up. My job on the crisis hotline is honestly to try to keep somebody on the phone for as long as possible for EMS to get there. And in that moment, I was a minute late, right? And that just really stuck with me. I just started looking into that. I was like, what is wrong with our healthcare system here in the States? That's where the mission came from, right? To increase access and understanding of healthcare. The reason I named it Volta is because I was born in the Volta region in Ghana. The Volta region has the Volta River. The river, it's everything to the people that live in that region. On one hand, I wanted to honor my roots of where I'm from, but then also, health it's vital.
Welcome to Pinnacle Code, where we empower second and 1.5 generation Black Americans. I'm your host, Ben Arthur. Before we get into this week's episode, wanted to thank you guys for all your continued support of the show. Pinnacle Code recently hit 30,000 views on YouTube. That wouldn't be possible without all of you guys and the support. I want the show to continue to inspire and elevate as many people as possible. And in order to do that, I ask you for some help. For as many views as the podcast continues to accumulate, the show only has 67 subscribers on YouTube and 11 ratings combined on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as of this recording. So by subscribing to the YouTube channel or rating the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, that would not only go a long way to helping me continue to do the show, but improve the quality of the episodes, bring in a bigger guests, and reach a wider audience. So appreciate you guys in advance for the help. This week's episode features Tsikata Apenyo. He's a Ghanaian-American, the CEO and founder of Volta Health, which is dedicated to improving the access to and the understanding of the healthcare system. It's a startup that has generated over $2 million in revenue in just under 2 years of existence. And by next year, they're expecting to hit 100,000 users. Beyond his life as an entrepreneur, Tsikata's list of accolades is quite impressive. He holds an MBA from Yale University. He's an MD candidate at Brown University. He's a Fulbright Fellow and a Tillman Scholar. And several years ago, we attended the University of Portland together in Oregon as undergrads. That's where we became friends and bonded over our shared connection to Ghana. So without any further ado, let's go. You were born in Ghana, then you came to the US, right? But then you went back to Ghana. Can you explain exactly how that worked, why it kind of played out that way?
Yeah, no. So, my dad came here in the 70s and he went to grad school and he was working here. But when it came time for, me and my siblings to be born, he wanted us to be born in Ghana to understand the language, the culture, things that are hard to pick up here in the States, especially when, we're not, for example, like there's a huge Nigerian diaspora. There's not a huge Ghanaian diaspora. So you can't pick up those, some of those things here in the States. So I was born in Ghana. I was there for 6 years of my life. And then we came and we moved to Maryland, which is probably, I think, when I talk to Ghanaians and they're like, oh, you lived in Maryland, so you didn't really leave. Because there's so many Ghanaians that are in Maryland.
That's a fact.
Yeah, and like in the DMV area. So I was there for another 6 years, and then I feel like for I don't know, if it translates cultures, but at least for a lot of African kids, you're the worst thing that your parent can kind of threaten you with when you're young is that, hey, I'll send you back home, and nobody actually thinks it's ever going to happen at all. Uh, it did happen for me. I was sent back home, and it's funny because when I tell people that are from the States and their families have just kind of always been here, they think that's such a cool thing. They're like, "Oh my goodness, you went back to Ghana and it was amazing." But then anybody that has is a third culture kid, they're like, "Oh, you messed up," and that's exactly messed up big time.
So
So
what did you do? What led to your dad sending you
yeah,
back then?
it was a lot. It was obviously a lot of things. I think I came to the States when I was 6, and um, I think by the time when I was 12, I was Americanized in every sense of the word. And I think for him, he grew up in Ghana right before independence, right? And he was, dirt poor, didn't have shoes till he was 15, and was raised by a single mother. And I think he saw kind of how I was growing up, and I don't think I was really appreciative of most of the things here, and there's a certain like hunger that comes from being an immigrant, and I definitely didn't have that. So I think I was, taking too many things for granted. I was getting in trouble at school for just absolutely dumb things. And, I didn't think the threat was actually real, but no, he did not bluff on that one. So I went back to Ghana, and I was in boarding school for
Mm,
I still I have cousins and uncles that are in Ghana, so I was with them for a decent bit. But I was in Ghanaian boarding school for full 3 years, almost 4 years, and it was life changing. I call it was very much like Stockholm syndrome because when I was
mm.
there, I hated every single second. I mean, every single second. There's nothing to kind of describe how much I hated that place.
Mm,
But looking back, there's no way at all I would be where I am had I not been there because it taught me tenacity. It taught me hustle, like being a hustler, and I think um, there was two things that I remember, the first time I went back to Ghana when I was, 12, to tell you how Americanized I'd become. There, it was July 1st, which it's a holiday in Ghana, and we got to our place, and there's a power outage.
mm,
And I go, and I'm just like this kid. I'm just like turning the light on and off, and I'm like looking at my dad. I'm like, What's going on here?" And he said, "There's a power outage," and I'm like, what do you mean the power's out? Like, I mean, I just like
mm.
couldn't fathom that the power was out. And it was a rude awakening, kind of going back there. But over the course of being there and especially the thing about boarding school in a place like Ghana is that they're treated there is not, I would say, great child protection laws. I would say there, right? Like, you are waking up at 4 in the morning
Mm,
to go fetch water from, with a bucket from a well. You're getting punished by people that are 3 years older than you with whether it's a belt, stick, whatever it is. The teachers do it too. On the weekends, you have, in Ghana, they call it a cutlass. Here, it's just a machete. And you were the groundskeepers. like,
mm.
like there was no John Deere that was going around mowing the lawn. So, it was us that kind of had to keep the grass or the weeds cut. So, it was just, going from being in Maryland where, yeah, I mean, you just have great life to kind of just suddenly being thrown into that. You grow up really quickly, and I grew up really quickly being there because I was also the youngest person at the school because it was senior high
Mm,
school.
mm,
So putting all those in, I say it was like and I'm sure we'll get to like UP, but I think the reason I was able to kind of, I showed up to college first day and I was just like, hit the ground running was because I already been to college. Like
Yeah.
boarding school is like going to college before you're ready for college. Not only just like from the emotional and all that part, but like academically, I think a lot of people, they hear about Africa and they're like, oh, I mean, there's this stereotype that maybe the academics aren't up to par as what we have here in the States. But when I came back to the States, I was sleeping in classes. Like it was a joke. It was a complete joke. And I slept through most of college, like because of what I did for 3 years in Ghana. So I was, and yeah, I mean, and to kind of go deeper into how just drastically different it was, and why I'm like the laws aren't the same in Ghana in here, is that there's only two places in boarding school in Ghana that you are with the opposite sex, just because they have their dormitories, we have our dormitories. So one of the places in the classroom, the tuition blocks, the other place is in the dining hall or auditorium. And so if they wanted to make something known, they would post it right in front of the dining hall, right? And there's only one way in, there's one way out.
Yeah.
And so at the end of or beginning, I mean, it was always there. They would print papers of like how good academically you are. And there was one test in the entire semester, and it's like you do well on that test or you don't do well on that test, and that's kind of determines your fate, right? And when I showed up there, I was a horrible student. I was an absolutely horrible student. And I remember seeing that my first few days, and so there's that list, and it's like names, like actual
Yeah.
names, like what your score was, ranked, and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And then at the very bottom, like near the bottom, there's a nice red line, right? And you fall below that red line, you're not coming back the next semester if you're. But to me, that was probably a blessing to not come back, because like if you were right above that red line, the embarrassment that you would face
Mm.
like the next semester. So for that reason, I became a great student. I didn't want like the girls to be laughing at me. So
Yeah.
I studied really, really hard, and that's what I say that was a very transformative period of my life, because I think I got disciplined. I became better academically. I just a lot of things, and for what was a punishment, I think for being sent back to Ghana, I think it made me the person I am today.
Yeah. Say what you want about Africa, Ghana, maybe Ghana specifically. I mean, we
Yeah.
do not play about academics, and there are all
No.
these. Yeah, there's that like that embarrassment you get from like failing. They'll make sure everyone else
Everybody
knows that
sees
you're
it.
failing. And
Exactly.
that's ingrained in like in the mindset of the
Yeah.
kids, like the parents, even if you grow up in the US, kind of as we did. So
1,000%. And I don't know. I mean, I hope things have changed now, but growing up, I don't think that I'd ever heard the word mental health. Like that was just not a thing. So like, because you see people, like let's say in the class that enters, senior high school in Ghana, more than half I don't think finishes, right? And it's either academic reasons or just like another reason. That other reason was mental health, but like nobody ever talked about it because it's not a word. Like
yeah.
I generally don't think there's a word for it in the local, dialects. But
Mm.
like, something like that in which you're seeing, let's say your name is on the bottom of that list, there's two things that can happen, right? I think you can either kind of rise to the occasion, or it can just really, really detrimentally just like impact you, right?
Yeah.
And then not just that, right? But it's you're waking up at 4 in the morning every single day. If you don't make your bed, you're gonna get punished. If you show up to class on time, you're getting punished. If you can't, if if they cold call you and you don't know the answer, you're getting punished. Like I mean, it was a pressure cooker, but if you
Yeah.
came out of that pressure cooker, I think everybody I know that was in my class, they're doing some pretty amazing things, because
Yeah.
if you can come out of that pressure cooker,
The
nothing
rest of life,
phases
yeah,
you.
piece of
Yeah,
cake.
like nothing phases you in life. Like it's just like,
Right.
oh, what, like nothing. Uh, yeah, nothing will phase you.
What did those punishments you said punishment, like if you got cold called and you didn't know the answer, what
Yeah.
exactly did punishment in that setting look like?
Yeah, that's yeah, there was no timeout. I'll put it that way. So the teacher one, it was very hierarchical. So if you are a first year, freshman, they're the seniors are gods, right? They can beat you and there's nothing
Hmm.
you can say about it. Likewise, the teachers are gods. They can beat you and there's nothing you can say about
Mm.
it. So whether it was with, you know, lashings with a belt, a stick, whatever.
Yeah.
That was a punishment. And so, and then to further kind of like buttress that point about there's no such thing as mental health, is, if you're, let's say you're getting lashings and you start crying, forget it. Like that your punishment just got twice as bad. So you were taught to
Hmm.
be stone cold,
Hmm.
and just kind of just like, yeah, you were taught. I mean, and I, I'm still in the military now, right? And what I've had to go through in the military here is, it's nothing compared to what I went through.
I bet, yeah.
It's nothing.
That's
It's literally
crazy.
nothing. So yeah.
Man. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, my dad went to boarding school in Ghana, and he's told me some stuff, but I wonder,
Oh,
that
he
makes me
can't tell you
wonder.
most of it. Trust
Yeah,
me,
because
he
yeah, because
cannot
I'm
tell you
like,
most of
because
it.
I didn't realize it was that bad.
It
Like
was, and
I'm
like the crazy thing is, if he went to boarding, I had it good.
yeah.
Like, like I would talk to my uncle and my dad, and they're like, "Oh, you're like they're taking good care of you," because in their time, it was a million times. It was a million times worse.
Huh. Yeah,
Yeah,
because his time would have been the 60s, 70s. So yeah, I can only
it was bad.
imagine.
It
Yeah.
was bad.
So what was it, 3, 4 years you spent in Ghana when you were kind of sent
Yeah,
over? So
yeah,
I'm wondering, like, how did you, as you kind of got older, right? Like, how did you grapple with your identity, right? Because you started in Ghana, right? Then, as you said, you became kind
yeah,
of Americanized, right? In Maryland. Then you go back to Ghana, and then you're looked at as the foreigner, and then you come
yeah,
back to the U.S. And I can imagine there potentially being some identity maybe type
yeah.
issues there.
I mean,
So how?
I had a
Yeah.
British accent, like, I had a
Wow.
British accent when I came back. But yeah, no, I mean, I think it's always been something that, I wrote my Fulbright essay on that, and it was pretty much, that, uh, I don't know where I know where I'm from, but I don't know, where I'm from. It's a weird, it's hard to describe, and I think, likely people that had similar upbringings can kind of understand. Otherwise, it's really difficult to understand, because I was born in Ghana, as you said, but when I came back and was in boarding school, I was being called Obroni, which means white man,
Yeah.
foreigner, right?
Exactly.
And I was just like, "What are you talking?" Like, I understand. I literally understand language. Like, you can't tell me I'm a foreigner, right? But then, when you come here as well, it's, obviously, when you have to check a box, for ethnicity, you're black. But, I didn't have the same, experiences, as, I think a lot of Black America. So it's, you kind of have to learn, to some extent. I mean, you also just experience it just because you're just black, but you also have to learn, Black culture to a certain extent, because you're not just, you're not embedded with it,
Yeah.
from the minute you were born.
Yeah, and I wanted to go into that a little bit more, right? Because as we were kind of like talking about, but before we recorded, right? Like, if you come from a Ghanaian or just African background in general, or even from the Caribbean, you come to the U.S. and they look at race is a big part of
Yeah.
identity here, right? So like if you're a black person coming from those places, it's like, okay, all of a sudden you're maybe more conscious of your blackness, maybe in a way that you weren't kind of in that other environment. And then as you said, like even though you are literally black, you don't have the same experiences
All right.
as the rest of Black America. Like even for me, even though I was born here, I never lived in Ghana, but just because of my parents' background in Ghana, like I can't relate to a slavery in the same way
Yeah.
that the rest of Black America can, or segregation, Jim Crow, redlining, whatever it was. You can feel for that, right? And growing up here, you feel an attachment, but also you're kind of different too. So I say all that to say, like, how exactly did you relate? And maybe that's still a fluid process, even at this age. But how have you related to maybe Black America, and maybe dealing with maybe trying to assimilate but also maintain your authenticity at the same time?
Yeah.
Like how have those forces kind of played out in your life?
No, it's hard, right? It's hard. I think anybody that's in, either child of immigrants or immigrants themselves, you actually you kind of lose your identity, or you're kind of, you're in uh you're always looking for identity. It's not that you really lost it, but you're going in between these two worlds all the time, which on one hand I think it's actually a huge blessing, like an amazing blessing, because you're a chameleon. You can you can like make a friend really quick, or you can like assimilate into any environment really really quick. But then I think that's just a superficial layer, right? But there's a deeper layer there in which I say never is probably too strong a word, but it's gonna be really hard for you to truly, grasp the culture to a T. But I think there's been studies that have been done in which it was done on Mexican Americans, but the first generation, they're very similar to just folks from Mexico. The second generation, you can kind of see things like changing a little bit, even like their health, like the diseases that they're getting and things of that nature.
Hmm.
And by the third generation, they're just American, like they're not
Yeah,
Mexican American anymore,
yeah.
right? And I think one thing, and I'm sure your parents probably kind of instilled in you, is to always try to hold on to a piece of where you're from, right? That's my name is very unique, and I think it's a clear reminder forever of kind of where I'm from. But then coming here to the States, I think on one hand, yes, having to kind of learn and adapt and um recognize Black culture. But then on the other hand, when anybody that's not Black, or what, even people that are Black, when they see you, they think you're Black, right? You're going to get treated the same. You're going to get
Yeah.
the same things that are going to be called to you, this or that. So even if somebody didn't want to be associated with Blackness in America, you have no choice. Like nobody, they don't know
Because
when
you're
people
looked at
see
as
you.
Black in America.
You're
Yeah,
Black. You're Black.
exactly.
No, like yeah, nobody cares. Yeah, you're just Black, right? So if you're not open to Black culture and kind of understanding, we're going through the same plight, right? Regardless of kind of where we're from. So yeah.
What I wanted to move on to was the whole idea of kind of African parents, what that kind of means
Yeah.
in the American context. So like having like an African dad, right? What has that what does that look like? What are
Yeah.
some of the mannerisms, the actions that you think of when you think of kind of like that whole, caricature of like
Yeah.
having an African dad?
No, it's the same, regardless if you're from Senegal, Ghana,
Yeah.
Nigeria. What they're all the exact same. And it's funny. And again, I think growing up, I grew up in middle class environments, and I was in Maryland, like, but Harford County, Maryland, in which I think like middle school, I was like one of two Black families in my middle school, right? So
Mm.
it wasn't until a couple years ago I like came across this like Instagram profile in which the person was like making fun of kind of how folks like us grew up, and I was like, oh wow, like they were all the
Spot
same.
on.
Like
Yeah,
everybody was the
exactly.
exact
It's spot
same.
on.
It's
Exactly.
like spot on. But I think what's really interesting is, and because we're not as Ghanaians or folks from Africa that come here to the States and are first or second generation, because there's not a lot of us in terms of sheer size. Other cultures, like for example, like I do, Asian American parents get a lot, they get a lot of slack for just how hard, they may be on their kids or this or that. But I think, because we're just not a lot in sheer number, people don't realize that like African parents are 10 times worse. Like, they are 10 times, because for them, and I think I kind of mentioned this earlier when we were talking before this started, the most important thing in their lives is stability, like
Yeah.
stability. And for that reason, a lot of them have a really keen focus on education, because and the three things that you are told that you have to be is you have to either be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, right?
Yeah.
Because according to life and society, like you get one of those three jobs,
You're
you're
successful.
successful. Yeah, you're not going to hopefully suffer for the rest of your life. And for I think for them, coming from where they come from, that's all they want for us, or even for themselves as well, is to make sure that like we're on good stable footing. And I think that's why they're so hard
Yeah.
on us. I mean, that is why they're so hard on us. It's you might not ever get told up front, hey, I love you, or anything like that, but it's through their actions that like they mean well, right? And they truly care about you and kind of the family, but um their actions aren't the most lovey-dovey in the world.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, so Chikata, how do you maybe look at how do you I guess maybe define success and achievement given kind of your experiences in Ghana, and also just kind of that whole immigrant mentality of stability playing a big role in what achievement success can
Yeah.
mean. I guess how is all that maybe created maybe a nuanced perception of success and achievement to you, and how do you define those things?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's hard for me to define them, to be honest, but one thing I think for me, this whole journey started when I was in boarding school in Ghana, and my bunkmate, he grew up with eight or nine brothers and sisters, and probably a place as small as the rooms we're in right now, right? And that's where they all had to live. And kind of seeing that and seeing how hard he worked, seeing how hard a lot of people that I went to school with worked, but they just didn't have opportunity, right? Like
Mm,
you can work as hard as you want, but if there's no opportunity around, it doesn't matter.
mm,
And a lot of those folks now, like I was not even close to being the smartest person there at all, right? But looking at them and seeing how hard they worked, I think I made a promise to myself when I was there that if because I wasn't I thought I was like gonna be stuck there forever. But if I ever came back to America, I would never let an opportunity pass. And that's a promise that I keep to myself. And our school motto and when I was in Ghana was Carpe Diem. It
mm.
was seize the day, seize the opportunity. And um I that's just one thing, I always go for, because I think that's what's going to lead to success. And to kind of in that vein, I think the interesting thing about being an immigrant is, yes, you want that stability, you want this or that, but you also know, I think oftentimes where you came from. Because of where you came from, you can do like there's nothing that bad here in the States. Like there's just like nothing that bad. So that, in my eyes, that gives you the opportunity to just like take a lot of risk and chances, because you can go through, like you can, if it doesn't work out, dude, you're in America. Like,
Yeah,
you're fine.
that's a
You're
fact.
totally fine.
That's
You're
a
in
fact.
America. Yeah. So like, why not go for it? Right. And I
Yeah.
think, when you look around, even like tech companies, a lot of tech companies are ran by either immigrants or second generation immigrants or whatever, because, I think part of that is that you're willing to kind of like take the shot, knowing that if it doesn't work out, dude, I was like carrying buckets at 4:30 in the morning, like 10 years ago. Like, I'm fine. Like, I'll be
Yeah,
fine.
no, that's a fact. That's
Like, I'll be
no.
fine. Obviously I hope it works out, but if it does, I'm going to really take every single opportunity and work at it as if it's the last opportunity I'll ever have, because I know um I was fortunate to be um one of the people that got out, right? And I have an obligation and kind of a duty to make sure I give it my all, to represent them well, and to um and to make sure that um it wasn't a mistake that I was given that opportunity, because I know every single one of my classmates back in Ghana, if they had been given the opportunity, they would have
Mm.
taken it and ran with it, right? So I have to do the same thing, and um, that's yeah, and fast forward to today, I started a company a year back, and I have a couple of tenets that I really look for and look at. And one of them's meritocracy. And the world's not a meritocratic place at all, like at all. But I strongly believe in that for our company. And I think one thing that's really interesting is that we have about like 10 people that work for us, and every single one of them, besides one or two, is an immigrant
Mm.
or child of immigrants, because there's a certain hunger, there's a certain there's just something that's in your eyes that like you are willing to work so hard, do whatever it takes in order to get that. And that's not to say other people just don't have it, but I think with immigrants, it's just you can see it, you can feel it. And I think that's part of the reason why our company has been able to make so much progress in such a short amount of time, is because like we're all go getters, we're
Yeah,
hustlers, and like I
exactly.
don't think being a hustler is a bad thing at all. Like I would rather hire somebody that sells whatever on the corner street of whatever inner city than somebody that's got 5 Ivy League degrees. Like, I don't care. Like, I would bet on the hustler every single day of the week, because they're gonna get it done.
Facts. Yeah, that's why we see immigrants taking over America, and it's not just
Yeah,
Africans. Obviously, it's Asians, a whole bunch of different groups, and yeah, I think speaking to your point about just seeing your bunkmate right in board school, in boarding school, and just how he didn't really have opportunity, and I think it's really hard for a lot of people here to conceptualize that level of struggle and that kind of lack of opportunity, and it's very easy to get comfortable and to
absolutely,
settle because you don't have that
absolutely.
perception. And yeah, I see it as a tremendous superpower for me too. Like a lot of people I don't think can understand why I work so effing
No,
hard, because
no, yeah,
they don't
100%.
understand. Yeah, they don't understand what it took for my parents to kind of create the life that it did for
Exactly.
my sister and I. And then
Yeah,
even me, my own eyes going back to Ghana with them and seeing the way some people struggle, like
yeah.
a lot of people don't realize how good they have it, you know?
Absolutely, and that's where, I think obviously I had my own experiences when I was, in Ghana for a few years, but like thinking back to my family, like my dad, was raised by a single mom, and in Ghana at that time, women didn't have the same rights or anything close to that, right? So
Yeah.
she had to work 3 jobs to support her 3 kids. So they were, she was never home, and they had to raise themselves, but they didn't have the clothes, they didn't have the shoes, they didn't have this or that, and my dad was fortunate to get a scholarship to come here, and that changed our entire family, right? Like that got us out of that cycle of poverty, which is so hard to get out of. And I owe it to my grandmother, I owe it to my dad to make sure, like, I mean, we're lucky, like we didn't do the hard part, like they did the hard part, and just giving us a chance um to be here. And so we can't let them down, and that's something that I think is really important to remember who came before you. um and like I tell people this all the time, like my story just simply wouldn't be possible had I not been in America. Like we are really, really lucky. Like, and that's even if let's say my dad had gone to Britain, I don't think my story would have been possible. Like, I
Mm.
think, um, there's just something about this country in which, not, we don't all, there's a lot of problems in America, let's be real, right? But, um, I think there's a lot of opportunities that are there, that just aren't available anywhere else in the world. And I think, America, for all its faults, still has kind of the hustler spirit. And, if you're able to kind of, or if you can try to kind of, strive for that, you'll see that, things start falling your way little by little.
You mentioned your company earlier, Chikata, and Volta Health. Can you explain why that was important for you to start? And kind of reading about it, I guess, kind of like I said in the beginning, I guess dedicated to improving the understanding of and the access to that, like to the healthcare system. I guess what led you to create that? What's the purpose
Yeah.
behind it?
There's a couple of things. I think, one, I remember when I was in Ghana, I got sick one time and I went to the hospital, and everybody in the country has like health insurance. And I remember walking out of there and I was like 13. Like I didn't even really understand anything. I was like, how is that simple? Like like I
Mhm.
remember having a dentist appointment, like a clean, like a, just a check in the States was not that simple. So for some reason that always stuck with me. But then it was actually when we were at UP, and I was in student government, and there were a couple of people that unfortunately took their lives, the year that, I think it was your senior year actually, and,
Yeah,
and I was
yeah,
a junior,
yeah.
and that I don't know, I felt a sense of responsibility, for helping make sure our fellow classmates in the student body um was healthy and well, and able to kind of reach their goals. So the other thing I knew from just working with administration was that like they were going to take forever to do anything, that's just higher ed. It takes a while for anything to get done. So I started volunteering, at a crisis hotline. And crisis hotlines are places you talk to all sorts of people, whether it's a single mother that's, struggling with interpersonal violence, or an elderly person that's just lonely. And I took thousands, hundreds of those kind of calls. But there's one call in particular that kind of, um, also helped change my life, I would say, and in which it was a college student. She was in her first year. It wasn't at UP; it was in another school completely. And she had the most amazing story. She was the first in her family to go to college. Her mother had been mostly incarcerated. Her father
Hmm.
was terminally ill, and I think for her to even just get to college, that's an incredible feat. But when she got to college, within the first couple of weeks, she got a UTI. And for a lot of women, UTIs are often benign, and can be treated. But for her, not having an understanding of the healthcare system, not having, the health literacy, she panicked, which I think a lot of people would. And so she did the first thing that most college students would do. She went to her health center, and they couldn't get her an appointment for 3 weeks. And moreover, she wasn't told, hey, you can go to urgent care, you can do this. So she was just kind of a sitting duck for 3 weeks. And
Mm.
what started out as a physical health condition morphed into a mental health crisis. And when she was finally seen 3 weeks later, she was initially misdiagnosed, but then just kind of she didn't feel well, right? So after that appointment, she walked to a bridge, and that's where she saw the number for the crisis hotline. And she called, and I was the one that picked up. And I'm usually not at a loss for words, but it was hard. I was just
Mm.
like, this is crazy. Like there's so many times um in that story that like somebody or something should have interceded. um so my job on the crisis hotline is honestly to try to keep somebody on the phone for as long as possible for EMS to get there. And in that moment, I was a minute late, right? And that just really stuck with me. And I think for me, for better or worse, I have like an obsessive personality. And I just kind of started looking into that. I was like, what is wrong with our healthcare system here in the States? Why is it
Mm.
so complicated? Why it's so complex? And that's one of the reasons I went to med school, right? And I got to med school, and I realized, they do a great job of teaching you what is the flu, how to treat the flu, how to prevent the flu, etc. But when it comes to those big picture kind of things, that's just not what they do. And that kind of led me to go to business school. Initially thinking I was going to go into hospital administration, or something in that realm. And I, honestly just kind of tripped across this, what became a company, in which I was, the thing about going to business school right after medical school is like you were just like in like some of the hardest years of your life, and now you're just like, I remember leaving med school and telling like my friends, I'm like, I'm going on a 2-year vacation, I'll be back, like don't worry, it's gonna be a vacation. So I like plenty of time, like way too much time, and in business school. And as you said, like people like us, it's just not good to have a lot of free time. I'll find something to do. And I think I sent out a survey to the Yale campus, and I was thinking like 30 people would get back to us. Like, because usually when I get a survey, the next thing I do is click delete. Like, I'm not taking the survey. And less than a week later, we got close to 1,800 students responded to the survey.
Wow.
And the survey was just about like healthcare access, and being able to navigate the system, and can you do it by yourself, etc. And I was really surprised at the results, especially considering a place like Yale. The folks that go there, by and large, they come from well-to-do backgrounds, higher socioeconomic statuses. So I'm thinking like, wow, if they're struggling, like like what about everybody else, right? So it led me to start, it was a project, right, in which I wanted to build a care navigation solution, right, in which like the way I think about it, for like the first 17 years of your life, your parents or guardians are there to do everything for you. And then you turn 18, and then they just toss you into the world, and they're like, figure it out. But the American healthcare system, like grown adults haven't figured it out, right? So an 18-year-old kid's kind of screwed. So we wanted to create something that kind of took your hand after your parents or guardians let go of you, and would kind of do the same things that they would do, like in terms of like helping you understand how to file a claim, or how to pick your insurance, or what is a copay, what's a deductible, etc.
Mm.
So um, that's what we were. That's what I set out to build, and that's where the mission came from, right? To increase access and understanding of healthcare. And at the time, and she still works for the now company. But a Yale student reached out to me, and she was like, "Hey, I'm a product designer. I think this is interesting, right?" So I put in the idea for this entrepreneurship competition, and we were finalists for it. I was like, "Whoa, this is interesting." And this is so 2023, like, so we started. The survey was, I think, in January or February. The entrepreneurship competition was in March or April. Then a month later, I go for a morning run. I come back, and the COO of Yale kind of just hit me up in my inbox and was like, "Hey, like, we would be interested in doing a pilot with your startup." And I'm like,
Wow.
"I don't have a startup." Like, what are you talking about? But like any good entrepreneur, I was like, "Bet." Well, yeah, we're absolutely down. We can do it. Like, we can. And it was just me and, like, two other people. But the next month we had a meeting with the executive team over at Yale, and we showed them like the very rudimentary basics of the platform, and they're blown away. And so they're like, "Yeah, when can we start?" And I'm just like, dude, this is not like, this is like just a survey I sent out. So ended up bringing on a couple of engineers, and then we built like a prototype MVP version. After that, like, it was like a month later, and they're like, "Yo, we need to start getting paid," right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
So
a big part of it. Yeah.
yeah, so I was like, "Dang, all right, cool. I guess we got to start getting, paying them." So I went out to raise money, and within, I think, like 3 weeks, we raised a like decent amount of money. Like, and I was like, "Oh, we're never gonna like run out of that money." You run out of money so quickly in business. And Yeah, slowly but surely, we grew, and now we're on, I think next year we're anticipated to have over 100,000 users. And
Wow.
we're generating a couple million in revenue. And
Congrats.
this started last year, right? So it's been like the craziest, like, 2 years. And I think, um, yeah, no, I mean, it's been an incredible journey. But the reason I named it, Volta, is because I was born in the Volta region in Ghana, right? To kind of bring it back to why we're talking. And the Volta region has the Volta River. And it's really, the Volta River is, I mean, it's everything to the people that live in that region, not only for food, but transportation and electricity even now, right? I think on one hand, I wanted to um, honor my roots, right, of where I'm from. But then also, health is, as it's vital. Health and wellness is vital, and just as how that river is vital to our people. I think that's the kind of relationship we want to have with our members. So yeah.
I love it. Such a powerful company that you're building out, and it's so needed, as you said. I mean, and the healthcare system is a doozy to
Yeah.
navigate. So, I mean, obviously the demand is there, and wish you continued success with that. I'm curious, how has your family felt about your entrepreneurial pursuits, right? Because as
Yeah.
we've kind of talked about, right, like the whole immigrant mentality is about stability, and
Yeah.
entrepreneurship is the complete
It's the
opposite of
very opposite of
stability.
that.
So
Yeah.
how has your family responded to that? How have you grappled with that yourself?
Yeah, I think I was it's funny, but I think I'm in a unique position in which, like, because I went to med school, because I went to business school,
You're good. You
they
check the
can't say
boxes. Yeah.
anything. Like,
That's a
I
fact.
checked the boxes, like, I did what you guys want. Like, there's nothing you can ask me to, nothing more. And I think I was super fortunate because when I was in business school doing this and it got bigger and bigger, it's like, worst case scenario, I become a doctor. Like, worst case scenario, like, that's the best case scenario for almost anybody, right? But then I remember there was a time in which it was like our first year, I showed my dad our projected revenues, and he changed up his tune real quick. So really, really quick. So it was partly I
Okay.
did what they would have wanted me to, but then I think it was de-risked enough when I showed it to him. And
Yeah, money
obviously
talks.
growing up with your parents, like if I told him the first day I started this, like what I was doing, he would have been like, "You're out of your damn mind. Like, stop it right now." Right. So I waited a couple months, let it build momentum, and then I showed him, projected revenues, and that was the end of the conversation.
I love it. I love it. Kind of winding down, Chikata. I want to be respectful of your time, but where can people go online or on social media to tap in with you, learn more about you, and also Volta Health as well?
Yeah, no, I was telling you earlier, it's we've kept a pretty low profile. But I'm on LinkedIn. If you can spell my name, you can probably figure out where I am. And also, Instagram and everything. But our website's Volta.health. And I think especially, yeah, next year is gonna be probably our big coming out party. So
Okay,
yeah, excited to kind of see where things go.
cool. And last one for you. I ask this to my guests at the end of every episode. It's kind of broad, a little broad, so kind of bear with me. But
Yeah.
um, what is one thing you believe that people can do more of to get a step closer to reaching their pinnacle to or kind of maximize their personal potential?
That's a great question. That's a really good question. One thing people can do more of. Um, I think, I'm sure a lot of people, do it. I think I'll go back to what I said earlier, in which, like, if you see opportunity, don't let it pass, like, at all. Like, because you never know when anything might come by again. And there have been a lot of, I remember, so, to give an example for is I worked in venture capital for a bit, and it got started because I hit up a friend, and she put me in touch with this guy because she was too busy to just like take my call. And it was a 30-minute meeting with this guy, and then at the end of the 30 minutes he was like, "Hey, I want you to write me an investment memo." And I'm like, "Yeah, of course." Like, I didn't know what the hell an investment memo was. So like I had to Google that shit, right? And he told me, he's like, "Yeah, like you have 2 weeks, right? And it just has to be one page." And so pretty much the investment memo was finding a company and then like writing everything about like why you should invest or why you shouldn't invest, etc. So like I took that on. I think a lot of, I didn't know where it was going to lead to, right? But I actually found a company at Brown. I was at Brown, at the time. I found a company, um, interviewed them, and wrote up a 10-page investment memo. And it wasn't like I knew where it was going. I was just like really interested in it. I wanted to give it my all. Um, they didn't invest in the company, and they should have, because it's now a Series B company. So it was a pretty good pick.
Mm.
But I sent him an email, and like a couple minutes later he gave me a call, and he was like, "Hey, do you want a job?" Like, "I'm
Mm.
starting a venture capital fund, and yeah, you want to come along for the ride?" And I said yes, not knowing what venture capital was. Like, we went to UP is like a normal person school. Like, we don't
It's
like
a
that's
different
not
world.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not something people go into, right? And he still hadn't told me what the hell VC was, because the 30-minute conversation, we are just getting to know each other. So I was like, "Yeah, whatever, right? Let's do it." And that changed my life. I mean, we ended up raising 85 million dollars for our first fund. I was, you know, in the headquarters of A16Z. I was like flying to Silicon Valley for stuff, and like I was exposed
Mm.
to this entirely different world that I absolutely did not know existed. Um, just because I just like carpe diem, seize the moment, right? And because of that, um, time in VC, that's what helped me immensely building this company. because I was able to kind of backwards engineer the process of like, okay, this is what kind of companies we would want when I was an investor. We should do this, we should do this. Like I was just able to kind of, do all of that. And, we've gone through 2 rounds of fundraising, and the past couple of years have been brutal to fundraise, like absolutely brutal. But we were able to do our fundraisers relatively quickly. And that was all just because of that experience I had as an investor. And yeah, so to answer your question, is just like seize the moment, seize the day, seize the opportunity, and just give it your all.
I love it. Tsikata, bro, thank you so much for your time, and for all you watching, whether it be via YouTube or listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The support means a ton, helps me continue to put put these shows out on a regular basis. If you can, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you could also follow the show on Apple or on Spotify. Give me a rating, engage, helps me continue to improve the product I'm putting out there. And you guys know the deal. Every other Wednesday at 5 p.m. Central is when I release new episodes. So until next time, I'll see you guys soon. All right, peace out.
Bye.